Your notepad at Chuck?
No, I need a notepad.
It's my fault. I didn't
Yeah, I don't mean to. I mean, because this probably open up a whole another can of worms. This is another major discussion. Chad and I have been having this discussion on his platform. We've been getting a lot of engagement, going over the Civil War, what was his actual motivations, who was Abraham Lincoln, what was his real agenda, so on and so forth. But there were a lot of voting restrictions for blacks in the South and in the North. And in fact, Illinois in particular and various other northern states were not only were blacks not permitted to vote, but many northern states would not allow blacks into their state. They have various laws. If you came to the state, you couldn't move to Illinois and in Michigan, Ohio, some of these other states. You couldn't, move, set up shop and establish yourself and start a family. They weren't allowed,
and these were northern states.
These were northern states. And what upset a lot of Southerners was the hypocrisy, because blacks weren't treated particularly well in the North either. And there was a better communal type relationship between blacks and whites that was fostered by way of familiarity, even if there was a slave master, slave owner dynamic, that kind of a kinship and just kind of being, used to one another.
I mean, Abraham Lincoln said that slavery was the most weirdest. He was the most peculiar institution.
Yeah, he called it a peculiar institution, but Lincoln didn't particularly care too much for black people, to be honest. And this just
I didn't say he did.
No. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying that. But what vexed Lincoln more so than anything else was this idea that pretty much the state, each individual state, can do within, of course, within constitutional confines, for sure. But the states, have a stake in the governing of their own affairs, and this interfered with Lincoln's long-term vision for his. There was a term for it. I forgot what it's called, but the whole issue of the split between North and South, and this was, a lot of people say, well, the Democrat Party and slavery and these things. Well, that's not entirely true, if it is true at all, to be honest. The Democrat Party,
it's about to get good now.
Yeah, the idea was about tariffs and high taxes, and the idea of Lincoln and there were many others like him who had this idea that the United States was to become a kind of rival to the British Empire and to the sort of newly emerging German Empire under Otto von Bismarck. When you see the consolidation of Germany sort of happening around the same time that the Civil War or the war between the states was going on. And so there was a lot to Chad's point, a nuance there, because like you said, Vince, a lot of people looked at the Republicans as though they didn't belong there, because the Republican Party agenda at the time was to undermine the authority of the states for the purpose of creating this new sort of America, and for so much talk, and for so much we talk about with the progressive era in the late 19th century, the early 20th century, and the eugenicists and all that stuff, and we may even get into some of that stuff, but the mid 1800s, from the Civil War and on into the era of Reconstruction, that in fact was America's first progressive era. A lot of people don't think of it that way. But if you know and you understand the ideas of the Whigs and then later on the Republican Party, that's what the schism was all about. It was about the federal government versus the states. Even if you go back and you read Alexander Hamilton and Federalist 34 or Federalist 17, and Alexander Hamilton talked about a lot of these things, but Alexander Hamilton was a big executive branch guy.
Yes.
He's a Federalist.
He was a big executive branch guy.
Well, he wasn't a Federalist, though.
But when you go to it,
Like,
government.
He was a Federalist in name only.
But
like the word Federalist and Anti-Federalist are actually flipped.
Flip-top, yeah.
But when you look at what the actual they call it, when you look at the Federalist Papers, and you look at the Anti-Federalist Papers and the Brutus Papers, it's actually true that people like Patrick Henry and Robert Yates and Luther Martin and others, they were the actual real Federalists because they are the ones who really believed in limited government power. They're the ones who really believed in checks and balances. They are the ones who really believed in sovereignty of the states and the local communities. That's true federalism. Right. But like, it was a political kind of game of semantics.
Yes, but there's a time when theory bumps into reality.
Let me jump in when Vince is done, please.
When theory bumps into reality, like for instance, when we started the country, we had the Articles of Confederation. All the states didn't want the federal government to have any power. And for years they said, this cannot work.
I agree.
Theory bumped into reality.
I agree.
And they said, we got to rework this thing. They came with the Constitution.
I agree.
The Constitution stays there. The 10th Amendment is strong for years.
Right.
You have Thomas Jefferson and James Madison that comes out with the Virginia, Kentucky resolutions that said basically the states can nullify any law they don't like.
Right.
Yeah,
and have the right to succession.
And then they reneged.
Yeah, and then people looked around and then you see John C. Calhoun go to South Carolina with the nullification crisis. Him and Andrew Jackson about to go to blows over it. Yeah. Andrew Jackson's going to hang everybody in South Carolina.
Yeah. So
and they broke that down. So now this is coming to a head. Right. So what happens? You get all this new land with the Louisiana Purchase, all this new land after the war.
West.
What are we going to do with it? Right. Are we going to make America a superpower like it is up north? Manhattan was worth more than the whole South combined. Right. Or are we going to make it a slave nation where we are going to be taken over by the Europeans and lowers who are industrialized? And we got half of our country with slaves and cotton.
Well, this is not sustainable.
What are we going to do? We need to build a railroad from here to California, and we can't take it through slave country. Yeah. We need to build factories, and we can't go down there arguing. My hometown, Brownsville, Tennessee.
Let me ask you
some of the best guys.
No, you got to
real quick.
Go ahead.
It was one of the poorest counties in our state for one reason. Most of the white people own the land for cotton. They wouldn't allow factories to be built on it. They wouldn't allow anything to be done with it. But a few people had the money, cotton field, and my daddy was a sharecropper there. It finally started becoming something when they started taking that land away. And now they built a Ford factory down there that's going to pay. The starting wage is going to be about $60,000 a year, and it's going to hire 10,000 people. Right. And they did it because they finally used the law to take this land away from these people that would never, ever let it go. Yeah. And now the people are benefiting from the fact that now we can industrialize this place that's only about 40 miles from Memphis. And we have interstates. And now the people there, and I'm going there, and it's changing. And people now have money. And people are building houses, and they're not poor anymore. And so that's why they looked at the South and they said, listen, these guys, these plantation owners are going to keep it this way forever unless we go down and break this up.
Now that's my question.
And they broke it up.
I mean, that's an assumption. But I mean, it's not something I don't think we know for sure. It's especially, I mean, when you
they would have kept it.
Well, they did keep it for another 100 years.
I don't believe. I certainly don't believe that the South would have, various Southern states would have, kept the institution of slavery for perpetuity.
I
don't believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. The sharecropping system was basically the same thing without the name.
I believe that. When you look at the writings of Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederate,
I don't think that would have happened.
He himself didn't believe that slavery should exist in perpetuity.
It was going to change naturally, but they weren't going to let them go unless they were forced to let them go. Because even the thing that killed the sharecropping system now was a cotton picker. Finally, they got one cotton picker that could do the job of 50 field hands.
Cotton gin.
And with cotton gin made cotton. Yeah. But what put the slave, the sharecropper system out of business was a cotton picker. Yeah. When they could get one cotton picker and they could rent them and they could do the work of, and you know what? And here's the thing a lot of people don't know. A lot of sharecroppers got mad because the cotton picker took their jobs away. And they had to find another way to make a living, and then guess what happened? The factories came down and they just started working there. So the economy always found a way. So as they freed up people from the cotton fields, the children went to school. They learned how to read and write, and the South changed forever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only that; it was also the fact too that there were a lot of
y'all won't let Chuck be great.
There were a lot of slave owners in the South.
It's okay.
Who were freeing their slaves upon their death and other such cases. So it wasn't just, and I know you're not making this point. So it wasn't just industrialization that was marking kind of the end of slavery. There was a number of factors, both moral and practical. I was going
to say that.
But here's the question. Then why then did they say that they would stop the Civil War and rejoin the Union if Abraham Lincoln pulled back the 13th Amendment and then ratified it?
Who said
freeing
that?
the slaves. Alexander Stevenson when he met with Lincoln and Seward.
But he was the vice president.
Yeah, but he was bringing the message from Jeff Davis. They passed the 13th Amendment before the war was over. They came down and said that we will get back with the Union. We will end the war if you guys pull back this 13th Amendment. And Lincoln said, no, slavery is done. And the war went on for almost another 4 or 5 months. And almost 100,000 more died because Abraham Lincoln refused to pull back the 13th Amendment. He said, I'm not going to do it. I got Arkansas, and he needed some, because they still believe that they need, Lincoln said the South is still part of the Union. Therefore, I'm going to need southern states. It was
a union that he essentially kind of sort of forced them back into.
Yeah.
And essentially removed a lot of their constitutional rights from them, especially, and I don't even know you're talking about the 13th Amendment, but especially when it came to the passage of the 14th Amendment, which a lot of, a handful of southern states didn't participate in. I mean, many people, if you look into the passage of the 14th Amendment, a lot of people talk about, and I think rightfully so, that the 14th Amendment was never legally passed. I don't know if anything.
Well, they did some things to pass it. They went down to Tennessee and basically arrested the legislature, made them vote for it. So they did some things. It was politics.
Yeah, it was a lot of bad politics going on, and I think even I can't recall. I may be wrong on the 2 states here. It may have been, what was it, Oregon and Ohio, something. But there were 2 states that weren't in the South or were part of the Confederate States.
One was definitely Nevada,
and they rescinded their vote, because they were so upset at what essentially the Republican dominated legislature had did to the South after allowing them to participate in some way with the passage of the 13th Amendment, then to turn around and say that, well, you have no stake here, because essentially they claim that your states are not functioning. Yeah. But they were functioning not too long ago, but now they're no longer. And
Chuck, could have got rougher than that, because they wanted to hang all of them.
Yeah.
They wanted to kill every last one of them.
And talking about Southerners. Well, especially, I mean,
and basically when you deal with they suspended habeas corpus. They basically said that you are in rebellion of the United States of America, and that you are treasonous against our government, which constitutionally you can't do. You can't commit treason against the United States government.
Well, is secession treason? Secession, is that treason?
Well, that's the thing. They were U.S. senators. And then they decided to pick up arms against the United States government and say they were trying to take it over. And as you can remember with John Brown, when John Brown took Harper's Ferry, it was Robert E. Lee that went and got him. Right. And basically said he's a traitor. Right. Hang him. Because he picked up arms against the United States of America. And then Robert E. Lee turned around and did the same exact thing. So you are a soldier of the United States Army, trained at West Point. Right. And you picked up arms against the Army of the United States of America. When they came down south, you were supposed to say, the Army is down south, we don't attack our army. Instead, was
it their army?
Well, it was the Army of the United States Army, the United States. The Army of the United States.
Are we talking about South Carolina at this point in 61?
The Army of the United States.
Was South Carolina still a part of the United States?
According to what Abraham Lincoln and you can't succeed. They say secession was illegal because there was
but he was wrong.
Talked about the fact
he was wrong.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
wrong.
Now that was theory.
Ooh,
because nobody can find in the Constitution where a state has a right to succeed.
We just talked about earlier how states did have a right to basically secede from the Union, did we not?
It's not in the Constitution.
Right, but it was agreed upon, wasn't it?
No, it was not. It was a theory that Jefferson and Madison had based on the 10th Amendment. It was a theory. It wasn't implied in the Constitution. You can go in front of the Supreme Court, different lawyers, different judges, different lawyers, different concepts, right? So, but it had never been adjudicated. It had never been like, they said Dred Scott had no rights that a white man needed to adhere to. That was theory.
Right.
You know, but you could have got another judge that said something completely different.
Right.
So if you had taken this in from the right judge, they would have said, yes, the South has a right to succeed.
Question
but
for
it
you.
had never been adjudicated on.
Was it adjudicated or did we just go the war route? I mean, you know.
Well, Abraham Lincoln said this hasn't been adjudicated. You have no right to succeed. Give me your legal, tell me the court that has given you the right to succeed, and we will adhere to it.
Okay.
You can't show me that. So you are the people in the South. Now, these states aren't in rebellion. There are people in the South who are in rebellion to the United States of America and our government. They've shot at our troops. They've confiscated our property. We're coming to get it back and arrest these people.
But can you point to one individual person who popularized the idea that individual states had no right to secede? Was it Lincoln, or could you point to someone else?
Well, Andrew Jackson basically first said it when John C. Calhoun went down there and started talking about, he was telling South Carolina because of the tariff situation, that we are going to succeed. And Andrew Jackson, you have no right to succeed. If you vote to succeed, I'm going to come down there and I'm going to hang all of you from the first tree that we get to. It was getting ready to get adjudicated, but then they made a deal. And so the whole thing just kind of went away. And it remained theory for the next, until the Civil War. And the Southerners believed it, and they had this theory about it, but it had never been adjudicated or put into law. So it became a concept of might makes right.
Now, see how you
moderator hat here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I am loving this gentleman's banter. I really am, but I think we gotta move on,
okay, all
y'all.
right. No,
just like black folks, always stuck in the past.
Chuck's gonna make a point.
Don't squelch the conversation.
But this is
only just now getting good.
This is a healthy conversation because this adds more layers, and it shows how complicated it is, not only to form a nation, but how to
keep
run it,
one,
how to keep it together, to understand its laws. It kind of transcends. It goes beyond,
because it was the same concept when the founding fathers said we have a right to leave Great Britain.
Right.
King George said you don't. So guess what they said? We can't get it. We can't get along. So we got to get it on.
Right.
And the war is going to determine who's right here.
Okay. And that's what happened.
So the South said it. Lincoln said it. Lincoln said we can't get along.
Okay.
So we got to get it on. And whoever wins this war will be determined who's right in this.
Right.
And Lincoln said we're going to decide that might makes right. And he said it.
That's that's why we're having this conversation. It's not that I'm disagreeing, because you're just laying out some facts about history, and this is why I was trying to lure some more of these details out, because I think these are the important conversations that people ought to start having if they want to better understand how our country should function, how it and how it is intended. It goes beyond this whole partisanship thing.
And
when you talk about
first inaugural address, you remember what he said? He said, I promised the South that I will give a 13th Amendment allowing you to keep your slaves if you don't succeed.
Exactly.
He said, I was going to give you a 13th Amendment. We will never touch your slaves.
That's why we brought up the Corwin Amendment.
Exactly. We will never do it.
Project. Right.
And the South turned him down.
Right. Because, and this is the point I think.
And here was able to kind of close the conversation down.
And I think this is an important conversation, because it's important.
How can you say it wasn't about slavery when was in the inaugural address?
No. But I think you can't say that. I think you sort of contradicted yourself, because if it wasn't about slavery, because Lincoln said on numerous occasions that as president of the United States, he has no authority. Because the idea of the Corwin Amendment, the original proposal of the 13th Amendment, was to ban the federal government from passing laws that interfered with slavery in each individual state. Now, if Lincoln was such a man of conviction when it came to his moral opposition to slavery, then why would he even say such a thing? The reason why I don't think the argument was his moral opposition to slavery. Or whatever it was.
He used it as leverage.
Or whatever it was.
To keep the Union together.
Exactly.
No, it wasn't that.
Because that's what Lincoln hold on. This is my belief. This is what Lincoln cared about most. He cared the most about, like you were talking about earlier, as far as expanding infrastructure and doing these things. Lincoln had all these various ideas about using terrorists, tariffs,
taxes,
to taxes, to
his
fund
wealthy friends.
his wealthy friends, and his internal improvement projects. We would call them corporate welfare today. This is another thing.
I will not let you talk about Lincoln.
But this is the type of nuanced conversation that we need to have.
Lincoln was an abolitionist. He was anti-slavery. He said that I don't want slavery expanded.
Right.
And
he was also the quintessential politician.
But he also talked about...
That's why he was so great.
Listen, he talked about the ordinance in the 1787.
Was he great during the Civil War?
Listen, no. He said the Southwest Ordinance...
And how he treated Northerners?
But no, do you remember what he talked about, the Northwest Ordinance? He said that when we made this nation, and when Great Britain gave us the territory from the 13 colonies to the Mississippi River, the founding fathers said slavery will not be allowed in certain territories, and y'all violated that. He said, now, you are in violation of the founding of this country because the founding fathers even signed off on the Northwest Ordinance that slavery will not be allowed in these areas, and now you're spreading it. Okay. He said slavery is not supposed to be in these areas. You're violating the Northwest Ordinance. I don't appreciate it. And in his Cooper Union speech, he sat there and named all the founding fathers who had also signed the Constitution that signed the Northwest Ordinance that said slavery is not supposed to be in these areas.
Y'all trying
but they did it anyway, and you're still expanding it. He said, I needed to stop.
But like Chad said,
and not taking it any further.
The quintessential politician.
But because the Southern states said this. They said that if we don't keep with the Missouri Compromise, one slave state, one northern state, Kansas-Nebraska Act killed that. And so that's why they were angry, because the Kansas-Nebraska Act killed the Missouri Compromise. It gave 1-to-1. Now, Lincoln is saying, no, we're expanding, no more slavery. They say sooner or later, our numbers are going to be so small in the House and the Senate that they're going to crush us. And we can't have that. So right now it's time for us to leave, because we don't have the leverage anymore to force these guys to give us one state. And so they said that they're going to crush us anyway. The plan is to crush us, y'all. Don't forget that. I was watching Godfather last night, and what did they say? They said, look, man, let's talk about your Godfather can live. And Michael said, no.
How many times
the job is to kill my father.
How many times a year do you watch Godfather?
I just saw it for the first time.
What?
I did. I loved it.
Everybody loves the Godfather.
I was yesterday years old.
But that's what the South said. No, their plan is to crush slavery.
Right.
It's to control us, control our economy. That's their job. They playing games, and it was true. They were going to crush them.
But see, that's my point. You talked about. I mean, it just brings us back to this whole notion, this idea of consensual government and the people. You talked about civil rights and how we, form our laws, and like I said, in theory, it's supposed to be a system where we consent. We have to give up a certain bit of our rights and so on, so that we can be governed. What say you? And I know this conversation go on forever. I know we got to move on.
I'm trying to just fast forward 100 years.
This is the rhetorical question. This is a rhetorical question. Just try my best to hold it in, because again, it begs the question of what say you when it comes to self-determination. And I think the important thing, and when we're having this conversation, is to point out how, at least in my humble opinion, sure, it is. You talking about slavery is, yes, it's justified to talk about that. But when you're talking about the theory idea of secession, it goes back to the rebellion, the war against the British. And when people say, well, and like you say, you can call it a theory, that's fair, that's fine. They say, well, how could we have just fought a war for independence against the British Empire, only to then turn around and create a society where the individual states within that union
can't do what they want to do.
What we want to do.
So, you're right, but that's what he said. The guy said that when the South loses this war, they will have on his tombstone, died of a theory.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing, and that's why just the conversation. This is not say I'm right, you're right. It's just the fact that these are the conversations that aren't being talked about. Why? Because slavery has been used since that time and onward as this rhetorical device, this political cudgel, this weapon to shape this narrative.
It does.
Right.
And when in fact we were dealing with many men who are a lot smarter than we are today. I was joking around with Chad earlier today, and I said I cannot name one person in the higher chamber or the lower chamber in the legislature who could write a collection of essays like the Federalist Paper, the Anti-Federalist Paper.
Today?
There is no James Madison today. There is no Alexander Hamilton today. We are represented by a bunch of buffoons.
They're idiots.
It couldn't be.
Agreed.
And so
Alexander Hamilton was a buffoon too.
Well, yeah,
but he was a very intelligent
buffoon. Yeah. I mean, we kind of,
I believe that Patrick Henry was
another one.
Heads above
him. Yeah, I like Patrick Henry a lot. I like George Mason a lot. But I mean,
now you apply those guys to the black minds and the black leadership of the day. If we had those minds leading Black America right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh yeah,
because they would have told.
Which leads me
go ahead.
To the conversation I want to have.
No, but I just think it's important because it just shows how much a lot of people don't talk about because perhaps they don't know.
They don't.
That it's a very rich history, and sometimes we like to boil things down to bad guys and good guys,
right?
Or bad parties and good parties. And the reality is that things are a bit more
it's very nuanced.
Because you say you brought up Alexander Hamilton. Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson said, no. And Chad has said out of his own mouth that a lot of Andrew Jackson's ideas and things that he stood for, Chad is somewhat of an admirer of Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson,
that's gonna be hard to argue.
He that's one of the founding members of the Democrat Party, and he said some of the exact same things that Lincoln said. There can be no secession. So see how nuanced it gets.
When he got up in that White House, you look at that for the federal government.
For the federal government, and
when John C. Calhoun was the senator from South Carolina,
he was out for the state
South Carolina. Because as you know, the senators were elected from what? The state legislature
until the 17th Amendment.
And they had to go and talk to they didn't talk to the people.
Right.
They talked to the legislatures.
That's right.
And the legislatures told them, this is what you go up to Washington and you tell them. And so they would go up there and they would talk to the federal government from the state legislatures, and it was a different dynamic. And they were really speaking for their state, not the people. The people talked to the legislature, and the legislature talked to the senator, and he took it up to Washington, D.C.
That's what a republic is.
And then, then we messed it up, when we decided.
Well, now you got the brain dead coming out. Is it democracy? So
life is a burden, y'all. We've been trying to figure this out for centuries. We ain't figured it out yet.
I think that how we figured out is this very last thing is to try to get men to get back to the concepts of the founding fathers when it came to freedom. When you get your freedom, what did they do? They go back they went there to their farms and their shops.
Preferably the anti-federalist founding fathers, but yes.
Everybody gonna assert their position.
They went back to their farms and their shops, and they lived as free men.
Yes,
right.
And they lived as men, getting mutual respect from one another.
Yeah.
The black men from the first Rhode Island who fought for the duration of the war, who stayed there from Bunker Hill to Yorktown, all black regiment, who fought when it ended. What did they do? They went back home
to their farms and their families,
and were free men, and were respected.
Right.
Amongst their peers, white and black. Why? Because they fought for their freedom.
Yeah.
And then they looked at the ones that went back to they never ever fought on the plantations that stayed and picked cotton, and they had no respect for them.
They were gentlemen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out here fighting too.
I'll go ahead to fight to get.
And my fight
room. Go ahead. I'm done.
Forward.
We're done.
By the way.
So no, this has been good. I think we've done a nice survey of history. And I just want to bring us forward just a little bit, maybe like 100 years.
We're like camping out.
Y'all camp out. We do.